All right, Wiz, we continue the How to Build ChatGPT event series today. We thought we were going to just do RAG. Turns out we're doing MCP too today. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Yeah, so it turns out that there's some evolution associated with the industry where doing RAG and sort of using MCP, there's quite a bit of an overlap, and we see that overlap exactly when we're connecting to outside data sources, just like MCP was originally designed for. How nice.
Yeah, it's it's great because it helps us understand kind of a key part of the workflow, which is that users are going to have data. People who are using your application are going to have data, and they're going to want to add data. And I think this is something that is really, helps us understand how to do that as an application developer using Responses API for our users.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So it really does feel like there's this real step forward in, we don't really care about like what exactly is MCP as much as like how do we use it to like build cool apps similar to HTTP. We don't really care how it does its magic under the hood. We just care that we can sort of use APIs. We can use them to get stuff. We can use them to change stuff on the other side. And we see a very similar thing with ChatGPT connectors and with MCP servers today. So really, really cool to see this come together in an event we thought was going to be a little bit more simple, but turns out, we get some of the latest buzzwords in here on basic RAG. How cool. You're going to demo both for us today. Is that right?
You know it.
All right. So simple, one file RAG, and take all my files, look through them, please. MCP server. It's going to be dope. I'm looking forward to it. You ready to go?
I could not be more ready.
That's
my responses to you.
Heard, and thank you for responding to my request. Let's get into the Responses API and how to build ChatGPT. Part 2, everybody. RAG and connectors. We're going to go ahead and align ourselves to today's session. If you've got questions along the way, smash the YouTube live chat or comment on your viewing platform, and we'll make sure to get you involved in the conversation. Today, we want to understand a little bit about RAG, a little bit how it fits in to when we want to build these very complex agentic applications, and a little bit how we want to start thinking not just from the developer perspective, but also from the user perspective. We want to take a look at these ChatGPT connectors and learn how to leverage them for retrieval, whether we're doing simple single file RAG or we're giving our application access to our entire set of documents on Google Drive, for instance, like is typical of many business enterprise plans on ChatGPT, including ours at AI Makerspace. And of course, we want to build, ship, and share this retrieval capability for our custom ChatGPT application with these 2 pathways. So just to be super clear, these are the 2 paths. One, we're going to do a simple file upload. And then the other, we're going to leverage MCP. We're going to use Model Context Protocol sort of as the connector. So all this comes together quite nicely in the end. From RAG to connectors, we meet at the Responses API. What a beautiful part 2 of our series. So just to remind everybody what we're doing here, we're building ChatGPT step by step. So if we go to the ChatGPT interface, we're going to be able to see a lot of different things that we can do. Today, we're going to focus on what happens when you click this little plus. You can look down at some of these connections that we can make. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see this a bit better. You can add simple files, or you can make these connections. Now, it turns out, as we'll see, we're going to actually build, ship, and share a GitHub connector, a GitHub MCP connector, And we can't see that here, but if you click use connectors and you click more, you can see all of the optional remote MCP servers that we can connect to. So of course we can do simple RAG, but we can also take it a step further. Let's see how to do both today. But first, let's just root ourselves in the very foundational concept of retrieval and augmenting our generations with retrieved context. You know, RAG was kind of developed to solve a specific problem. That is that these hallucinations we get from LLMs, the confident responses that are actually not true, or we can take a different definition that actually came out just last week from OpenAI themselves, plausible but false statements. This is from Why Language Models Hallucinate, came out September 5th this year. So this is kind of where the need for RAG begins and the need for retrieval augmentation begins. And so the way we solve this with people when we're having conversations with them is we fact check them. The way we solve this in general is we do fact checking with reference material. So we're going to retrieve some reference material. We're going to augment our prompt, our input, our context with that reference material, and we're going to generate better answers. So retrieval, augmented generation. And when we think about using RAG, we want to kind of zoom out for a second and think about, well, yeah, we're doing this as developers, but we want to kind of do it in the service of the application that we're building. So our user is going to ask something to our application. We can kind of deliver a number of different kinds of outputs depending on what we retrieve, depending on all of the things we put into our system prompt, our specific examples that we're putting in. Everything that we do to sort of engineer the context is going to contribute to, you know, really bad, good, or really, really great outputs. And we always want to stay rooted in that. But if we zoom in, you know, our user doesn't care, but we care as developers. We can consider that there is a retrieval process and there is a generation process. And both of these processes can be optimized on some level. And we want to do that even for very simple file search applications. But really, we should be starting with the retriever. And we should kind of assume the generator is going to do what the generator does. The generators will get better over time. We have control over retrieval in a data-centric world. As we like to say, you know, as goes retrieval, so goes generation. RAG is really just giving the LLM access to stuff it wasn't trained on, new knowledge that's not included in the corpus of documents that it actually saw during pre-training or even during mid-training and post-training. Classically, we think about this as dense vector retrieval being used to put the right stuff in context. We kind of think about it like we ask a question, we send that chunk, that question to an embedding model. We've already chunked up and embedded our data in a vector store, storage space for all of the chunked and vectorized pieces of our data. And we're essentially looking for similar stuff that's similar to our question. We set up a prompt template, says something like use the provided context to answer the user's query. And importantly, we say something like, if you don't know the answer, don't answer. Don't hallucinate. Say, I don't know. As we like to say at AI Makerspace, embrace the I don't know. That's what we want our LLMs to do. And in fact, this is exactly aligned with what we see again from the paper that came out from OpenAI this past week. They talk about hallucinations being inevitable. Well, as they found, They're not, because they can just say, I don't know. Or they can say, I'm not answering that question. Not going to lie to you, but I'm also not going to answer that question. And so we want to make sure that our applications are doing this. Presumably, OpenAI is doing this on the back end, as we'll see through their responses API for us. But in sort of a handcrafted way, we typically think about doing this in our applications. We're going to actually take that embedding representation out of the vector store. We're going to convert it back to natural language, and we're going to put those chunks of context into our prompt, into context. This retrieval process, it can be dense, it can be sparse. There can be lots of different ways to enhance this retrieval process. But this is sort of level 0, very simplistic way of thinking about RAG in general before we put the reference material in context. Now we're almost done with RAG. We have to still do the generation piece. That is, put all this stuff into the chat model and get our better answer here. So we've got a retrieval step, we've got a generation step. And if we think about that app that we're building, right? We've got the retriever, we've got the generator. We want to optimize that retrieval step. We want to consider that retrieval is the most important thing in a data-centric world. Okay, so consider the user for a second. The user only wants a great output. They don't want any bad outputs, any mid outputs. They don't want any of that. We're not the user, but we care about our users. We have user empathy. We are the builders. As a developer, you are the builder. In other words, you're the server and the user is the client. So when you implement RAG, your job is like super focused on optimizing this retrieval step. You're going to look at things like which document, what are the chunk sizes, what are the retrieval strategies and algorithms that you're going to use to make sure that this output is super great for the user. You know what docs you want, how you want them chunked, how you want them retrieved, the kind of output that that's going to provide the user. And really, you also want to make sure, again, back to that kind of system prompt level, you want to make sure that you're bounding the generation. You want to make sure that if it's not super clear from the context, if it's not super clear from the retrieval, you don't want to produce that answer. And so you're doing a lot of work to make sure that we produce that great output. Effectively, what we're doing is, in simple kind of handcrafted RAG, we're connecting users to the information that we know they need through our application. Now, there's a lot of simplification that can happen in 2025 in the fall here as we move up layers of abstraction. So let's outline what that looks like, for instance. If we think about the way we've been doing RAG the past couple of years, we actually don't really need to do all of this ourselves anymore. When we're looking at kind of handcrafting with the responses API, these pieces right here, the embedding model, the vector store, spinning all this stuff up ourselves, we actually don't really need to care about doing this. The responses API actually does this for us. And that's pretty cool, because it kind of abstracts away a lot of the challenging things that maybe we've faced in building our own custom RAG applications. And of course, as we move up a layer of abstraction, it's important to note, like, that doesn't mean you shouldn't care about what happens inside anymore. For instance, there was a paper came out a couple of weeks ago called "On the Theoretical Limitations of Embedding-Based Retrieval." We'll actually do RAG on this RAG paper, very meta RAG, classic AI Makerspace, classic LLM wizard stuff here. And the idea is, like, actually, as the world has changed and we've gone from simple IR to, what we've come to know and love as similarity-based RAG, the retrieval tasks we're actually supposed to accomplish now, from reasoning to instruction following to coding, these are actually not necessarily tasks that classic dense vector retrieval, or dense retrieval as the paper calls it, can do a super great job on. So as we abstract, let's just take note that we shouldn't forget. So, just because we're using LLMs, it doesn't mean we don't have to care about what happens inside of them anymore. It just kind of means that we probably have to care less, especially in a prototyping phase. So that seems to be true for RAG now when we're building with something like the Responses API. And similarly, we also can incorporate this idea of connecting through Model Context Protocol, through MCP. Now, of course, this shouldn't be a surprise if those of you that read the initial blog on MCP from November 2024, you may have seen this slide from us before if you follow our channel, but the new standard is for connecting AI assistants to where the data lives. And so, MCP, it's not about what it is, it's about how it's used. It's an open source standard, it's a protocol, it's a set of rules, yes. But what is it for? It's for connecting. It's for connecting AI applications. For connecting AI applications like Claude Desktop, Claude Code, to data sources and tools like Google Drive, like Slack. And it's about doing this connection of our apps to external systems in kind of a two-way bidirectional flow. Because again, we can sort of request and we can also edit stuff on the other side. For instance, if I'm messing with my documents, maybe I want to actually be able to update something related to those documents. And this bidirectionality is very similar to what we see in using classic APIs. So using MCP, we can actually take our applications and connect them, plug them in to data sources, to tools, to content repositories. Of course, MCP and the classic idea of it is it's the USB-C port for AI applications. Again, two-way, standardized connection. Don't really care how it works, just care that it does. Don't really care exactly what's going on inside, just care how I can use it to charge my phone, to move data, to do lots of different things. And in fact, if you haven't looked at the MCP website in a long time, I literally just kind of read you this top 3 lines of the MCP protocol website directly. And this idea of connecting is what we're going to leverage today. This idea of doing it for, oh, look at that, ChatGPT is what we're going to leverage today. Now, importantly, when we talk about building RAG, we talk about kind of connecting the information we know the users need. This is maybe a better way to think about when we're sort of giving carte blanche access to all the files on our Google Drive, for instance. We're kind of doing more of a connecting users to the information that we know they want access to. It's not as curated, it's not as handcrafted. There's more data in general, a larger scale. Fundamentally, that's going to dilute some of the context, but users really do want this. And certainly that's why we see it built out as a feature in ChatGPT. And our users are going to be no different in our organization or more broadly in the community and in the industry. So all this comes together, whether it's simple RAG or whether it's MCP, in our good friend, the Responses API. So Responses API came out in March. In May of this year, they released some new tools and features in the Responses API, adding some new built-in tools to the Responses API, our core API primitive for building out agentic agent applications, including, oh, look at this, all remote MCP servers, tools like image gen and code interpreter, and improvements to file search. So we can kind of think about this idea of RAG. We can think about this idea of this retriever step. Really, it's probably better visualized without this junk in the way, because we can't really see the prompt that OpenAI is using. We don't really know what the prompt is on the back end. We assume it's pretty good, but it's not as clear as it is when we do all this from scratch. And this retrieval step, whether we're retrieving documents directly from a single file through the Responses API, or we're retrieving, let's say, information from a broader MCP server, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're going and getting information, we're bringing it back into context. And so, Wiz, I'd love to have a quick discussion with you and vibe on this point for a second. Is it weird to say, is it okay to say that MCP is kind of doing RAG then? How do you think about this?
I mean, no, I don't think it is a bit weird, of course, but it's not like the weirdest.
Yeah.
MCP is like helping us do RAG, right? It's connecting us to data sources that we can then use to augment our context.
So it's sort of another layer of abstraction above kind of doing RAG. It's kind of like it's kind of like giving us access to easily do RAG amongst a bunch of different documents. Like
that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
It's like we need to connect to a data source, right? Typically, that's going to be like a vector index.
Yeah.
Right. Like vector database, whatever your favorite one is, Pinecone or whatever. What we're saying is that instead now it's going to be handled through the MCP. So the MCP is going to, in some ways, replace that index.
Okay. Yeah. So really, it does all come down to connecting, whether we're talking about RAG and connecting to a single file and doing it in a handcrafted way and building our own custom vector database, or we're talking about sort of being enabled to quickly and easily do RAG on any of our documents. We're sort of connecting to the thing that we want to retrieve, and we can connect directly to the file, or we can connect directly to all the files. And that's where sort of the MCP server comes in. Okay, so we've got a question in the chat from Manny here. Connecting data on MCP then. How secure is this? And can we improve the security of this? What's it look like in the Responses API today in terms of, your comfortability level shipping this kind of thing to production?
Yes. So it's actually not very secure. I mean, that isn't to say that it's like, there's no way for it to be secure, but out of the box, no, definitely not something that you want to be thinking is ultra secure. However, with things like OAuth, it is the same level of security that we see from other tools with extra added fun, potential fail cases. At the end of the day, we're letting an autonomous semi-intelligent system access our data. And so there's no specific guarantee that that's going to be done in a way that is most excellent every time, right? And so what I would implore people to do is think about this from the perspective of, you wouldn't give just anyone access to your email, I hope, right? And so you should think of it the same kind of way, that we're giving access to the LLM as soon as we do that OAuth. And so there's two flavors of security. On one end, it's standard OAuth 2.0. We love it. On the other end, it's a intelligence mimicking system that has access to your information. So
Okay. So, I mean, this is kind of an interesting point, because if we think about this sort of bi-directional flow between kind of what we're asking for and what the LLM is doing, you can imagine it's in there like manipulating the data directly. And this feels like something we don't want it to do in general, but certainly is part of the standard protocol, sort of like the, I don't have to just respond, but I can do an update, kind of classic CRUD thing. Is this like something we need to watch out for today? Is if we're not just doing RAG, which is just literally just retrieving, it's just getting the information coming one way, but this two-way thing, is this something we should be wary of when we're building?
Yes.
Okay.
Broadly speaking, yes.
All right. Yeah, it feels like so it feels similar to thinking about how we have some processes inside our company, for instance, that require access to accounts. And if one were to just retrieve that information, probably fine. But if one were to also be able to generate stuff and change stuff and delete stuff, the D in CRUD there, that's terrifying, actually. When you think about our YouTube channel, our LinkedIn channel. And so, it's very much worth thinking about. So you get carte blanche access to all your data, but then the LLM has carte blanche access to all your data. Quite interesting. Okay, so we've got another question here from Black Currant. Do we need an index of indices? So I think this is sort of in the context of using MCP as the ChatGPT connector here. If we're going to give it access to all of our docs, do we need to provide anything, or is it spinning that up automatically?
This is the beauty, right? It's just doing this for us, right? I mean, it's handling a lot of this stuff that we're typically trying to do just for us, which is very, very nice of it, right? The idea is that indeed we don't want to have to do all of this extra stuff every time like a user looks at us, right? And so I think that's the important piece here, which is that we want this to be seamless for our users, and the Responses API gives us a way to do that without engineering like a dynamic RAG, super thing or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's like the one-click deployment RAG or something.
That's right.
One-click deployment super RAG. Okay, so if I just have one file, then okay. If I just have one file, let's go to this question. And it's in my Google Docs. Should I take it out of my Google Docs and do simple RAG and do a little more handcrafted approach, or just run it through the Responses API, or should I just give the MCP server access to it? Like, what are you doing today if you're trying to solve this problem?
I mean, if I wanted to have it parse over a folder or my calendar or etc. or whatever, blah 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 blah, then I would certainly want to use a connector, right? I would want to connect my my entire service. If I'm using one-off, I'm just straight copy pasting that stuff, right? Like that's the beauty. If I want a little bit better than copy pasta, right? Yeah. I'll upload the PDF. Like that's the it just allowing me to make the decision when I need to, as opposed to forcing me to make it kind of ahead of time or thinking so much about it, right?
Yeah.
I would say that's what is most useful about these different patterns.
Simplest solution is the best.
That's right.
Don't need more horsepower than you need. Have you actually tapped out the horsepower that you have? And then, yeah, going back to being data centric and literally copying your data, pasting it in to the generator, that is also RAG. And so
That's right.
people can still do that, even though we have this crazy level of abstraction that we can work at super easily now. And
That's
so
right.
so all this is abstracted from us. For those of us that are used to like writing our own prompts, and maybe you can show us what we do know in the demo here in just a moment. But like, we don't really have access to the prompts in the same way we do when we handcraft, and this is where we start to get into this classic space as technology abstracts, and as we can build at higher and higher levels, that we no longer have access to the stuff at lower levels. So what do we know about the prompts being used for file search, about the prompts being used for tool descriptions in the remote MCP servers? Do we know anything at all?
No. I mean, we can infer things, or we could get stuff from the, we can kind of like request them, but the prompts are relatively, they're straightforwardly just not like important to us, is what I'm gonna say, right? So they're being changed and modified on the back end to be most compatible with whatever the task is. And that task is separate to like the task that we're requesting. And so you can imagine that they're doing the same amount of work behind the scenes as we might.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's still going to serve as a great baseline if we wanted to go out and produce our own application, if we
That's
wanted
correct.
to go out and handcraft. This is going to be a great way, similar to how we would use an OpenAI model off the shelf. We don't exactly know what's going on, but we can use it to say, can I solve this problem? And then if you really want to solve the problem, then start getting super detailed about every little aspect of it, to the extent that that allows you to optimize performance and efficiency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for your organization.
That's right.
Okay, very cool. Well, then I think we're ready to go ahead and get to the demo today, Wiz. The building of connectors, we're going to break down into two parts. As mentioned, we're going to look at the file search, and we're going to look at remote MCP servers. So we've got the paper teed up. And then, as mentioned, if you sort of double click in on use connectors, everybody can kind of see all the connectors pop up. We're going to use one today. We're going to use GitHub. I'm excited for this one. Handing it over to you, Wiz. Connectors with RAG and MCP demo. Buckle up, everybody. Part 2.
We're connecting out here. Okay, so yes, let me share the old screenerino here. There we go. And we're going to look at a couple different things. The first thing we're going to look at is ChatGPT. So easy enough. If we want to use connectors, we can click use connectors. Then we can click on our sources. You can see that I have already added my Google Calendar. If I wanted to add others, I would just do this here. You can also connect, of course, to GitHub, but we're connecting the calendar. You can ask questions like, yo, dog, what event do I have on Friday? And then it's gonna do its thing, use its incredible intelligence to determine with the connector what I've got going on Friday. You can trust that it's doing this. Oh, look, it found one event in Google Calendar. What a Chad. And so then we're going the rest of the way now. And we see, there's a GPU engineering meetups, fundamental of GPU orchestration that I'm going to. That seems pretty cool. I like that. And so I'm going to it as well. So that's great. So we're going to look at how we would do this ourselves in the notebook. So we're going to go to our How to Build ChatGPT repository. We're going to go to responses, API data, and connectors notebook. And we're going to look through how we do this. Now, the first thing we're going to do before that is we're going to look at how we do this part, which is adding some files. Maybe I want to add this paper. I can add it here, then ask questions. Why dense vector embeddings so bad, bro? And then I can send that request once it's done uploading. And the idea is here that, of course, then I can ask questions about it. Okay, so we get it, right? There you go. Everyone's happy. We get it. Now, in the responses API, this is actually kind of like just as easy. So we'll start our client, and then we'll have a create file, which is going to give us the file ID that we need. Now, the reason we have the file ID is because we want to be able to like track what the what the actual resource is called in OpenAI's servers, right? Because it's not just going to save the file name. There may be many files with the same name, so it gives us a unique identifier, which we want to get. And the way that we get that is we simply just upload our file, right? In this case, we have, of course, this full path to some datums, and then you're going to be able to upload that file. Very cool. Then we can create a vector store with it. The way we do this, crazy it's going to seem, but we use client.vectorstores.create, and then it creates a vector store for us. Very cool. Love to see it. Finally, with that vector store created, we can then upload. Now, if you've been with us for a little while, this is going to be a very familiar seeming format, right? We create the vector store, then we upload stuff to it, right? Or we upsert vectors, right? Same here. Then, of course, we process the file. Processing the file is basically just going to make sure that it's done processing before we try to use it. If it's not, we're going to get yelled at. No one likes being yelled at. Very cool. Okay, then we have the ability to ask questions about it. We can ask questions about it using our vector store ID with our tool of type file search. You can see, like, we can ask questions. What is deep research by OpenAI? Deep research is blah, 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 blah. We can look at some searches for it. We can look at some, key capabilities of it using, the actual search being included in the response. We can limit how many responses we get because this is going to help us have lower latency. And then, of course, we can add whatever we've got in our local file in the data directory in this repo. We can add that to our vector store, right? And then we can do multi-document search, which is basically the same thing, right? It's just going to be the same tool. This is kind of the beauty, right? We don't have to spend our engineering cycles building the system. The system is, leveraged through the responses API directly. So that's great. And we get, by the way, great response. Like, this is dope. Great stuff. Here's all the things you can upload. It's a bunch of stuff. That's great. For MCP and connectors, this is even easier, honestly. And the reason it's even easier is because it is effectively, it is just a single call, right, to the to the API that allows us to use this connector. So when I look at my connectors here, I'm just going to scroll back down. When we look at our connectors here, you're going to see that we have two types. We have one, which is this kind of actual literal connector, right, which is like a specific name. The connector you can think of as like OpenAI's own MCP for this particular tool. So this is like for Calendar, right? Calendar doesn't have like a publicly hosted MCP that you can just use. And so this is their version of that. Now it's going to need this authorization token, right? From auth2. Now we're going to talk about this when we start talking about end-to-end, how to incorporate this into like an actual workflow, right? That users can get that classic Google screen popping up, right? That you can click your Google account and sign in. But for now, we're just going to use this, this OAuth2 playground. I'm leaking my token here, so you know, if you really want to check my calendar very quickly, now is your time. But the idea is that we have this to get our auth token, and then we can use that token to connect to our calendar, and we can ask things like, you know, hey, what events do I have on my Google Calendar for Friday? And we get the same response that we got from ChatGPT, right? Which is very cool. And this is the idea, guys. This is realistically, like, this is the whole thing. We can also do things like searching the whole week, right? Finding the busiest days. So if we look at my very personal non-work calendar, you can see got a lot of availability, right? Excellent. Let's not worry about what the work calendars look like, but you know, this is great. And then finally, we have our MCP. So MCP, again, this is a single line, right? It's a single line. This is technically many lines, but you get the point, right? This is still considered a single line. The idea is that we can just point to whatever remote hosted MCP we have. We can provide authentication if we need it. In this case, we don't, and that's really it. Like, it's that easy to connect to MCP with the Responses API. So you can imagine, right? If you have many users and they have an MCP server that they're excited about, that you can let them access it through this workflow, and that's all you have to do, right? In this case, we're using Git MCP, which is basically going to slurp up docs from GitHub on the tick token library, and then we can ask how it works, and it gives us a response. But this is all done again through the Responses API. We don't have to build any MCP server. We don't have to build any connectors, right? We're just leveraging this through the Responses API, because that API is ultimately like the central powerhouse of our entire system. It's like the nexus through which all things are run. The long and short of it is this: with single requests, right? We can use a system like RAG, MCP, or connectors, and this is how we get this pleasant experience that you see in ChatGPT with our connectors, right? So there's a lot of like application side development that is missing here. So how do we actually handle the OAuth 2.0 seamlessly? You know, how do we make sure that users can add things in a way that's not error prone? But the crux of it, the actual core technology, real simple, straightforward API requests. There you go. I've been the whiz for this day's technical demo. Before I pass you guys back to Greg, I got to remind you to like and subscribe. You know, ring the bell notification. We're here every Wednesday. With that, we'll send you back to Dr. Greg. Let's go.
All right. Thanks, Wiz. And it is time to conclude today's discussion. So if you have questions, we do have plenty of time. We're working on more introductory level content like this as we get people ramped into building ChatGPT on their own. It's going to get complex soon enough, guys. But for today, RAG and connectors, pretty straightforward. What we saw today is we saw that part 2 allows us to build RAG and connectors with MCP or just simple file search. We can connect to all sorts of different tools, all sorts of different servers super easily. This is way beyond what we've been able to do in the past very, very easily. So it's great to see this integration of MCP in a simple, easy to use API setup. So, you know, if you can dream it, you can build it easier than ever. Doing RAG or leveraging these MCP servers is really about the same thing. It's about retrieving the information that we need and putting it into context. It's about engineering that context. It's about making connections to the systems where data lives. And so, Wiz, I'm going to kick off a discussion today, QA today, with a couple of questions for you. So we've looked at the Responses API over the last 2 sessions. Is this like a gold standard? We teach LangGraph in class, but what do you think about the responses API? Is this the right tool for people just getting started?
I mean, it's a good API, right? I mean, it does what it does. So that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, the idea is effectively, I think it's meant for different, audience, right? So responses API is something that like LangGraph or LangChain will have a connector for, right, and allow us to compose together into different things versus using it directly. But to get started, I mean, it's great. It works. You can build cool apps with it. What more in life do you need?
But you can't see the prompts. And so like this is where the open source tools kind of come into play. Like we're seeing this. It's not low code, of course, but it's sort of lower code.
That's right.
we're seeing this lower code now, like opportunity space open up for
That's right.
for builders to pick up tools and get going super duper quickly. Yeah, it just kind of works. It is open source, but as we start connecting to different parts of the OpenAI ecosystem, it gets less open, the AI.
That's right.
So Manny asks, if we are using this responses API, can we easily plug in like a Langsmith to it or a 1B to get the stuff we want about what's actually going on as we're operating?
If we build it ourselves on our end, of course we can do that. Yes. If we're not building something on our end, no. So like, as in, I don't think you can inject I don't think you can inject that during the flow of work on OpenAI's side, but I do think that you can inject that. Well, I know you can inject it if you're building the application from the ground up. So what I would say is, if you're a builder, yes. If you're a user, unclear.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And, as I think about kind of the future of RAG and the future of MCP here, like I'm kind of reminded of, the Apple charger refusing to change to change to USB-C. And then ultimately they did.
Yeah.
Are you expecting something similar? Like it just feels like soon enough nobody will say RAG and we'll just hit MCP servers or something.
Yeah. I think that might be true.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, it's technically not true. Okay, it's technically.
Sure. There will always be the RAG.
That's not the way it works. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But like MCP is going to be part of it if it's not.
Like RAG
MCP
is micro
going to be part
USB.
of the equation for people who want to attach their own data. It's a good thing for that, right? Like that is what it's good at.
That's what it's for. We just got to deal with the whole like don't delete it problem.
That's right.
It's almost like similar to the don't lie to me problem. Now we're on the don't delete it problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah. So, all right. I mean, that makes sense to me. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of thinking of RAG as micro USB, and then, MCP is like the shiny new USB-C, and it's faster and it's better. And
I think it's better to think of RAG as a process by which we augment the context window of the LLM, right? And so MCP helps augment the context window, but like that means it's RAG, right? Like
it will
that
be
is
leveraging the pattern of RAG.
I would say like MCP helps us replace things like our retrieval pipelines, but it doesn't remove RAG. RAG still exists. RAG's still dope. We love RAG because MCP is like the retriever pipeline, right? It's not doing It's not augmenting the LLM, by itself. We still have to have some pipeline that takes whatever we got from the MCP server and puts it into our application.
Yeah. Okay. So then if I'm just getting into AI engineering, let's say
Yes.
I'm watching this video, I'm like, I think this is a good series for me to get into AI engineering. Should I care about building retrieval pipelines right now, or should I care about leveraging MCP servers?
Yeah, you should absolutely care about building retrieval pipelines. I mean, that's one of the most important things that you can do, right? You know the data. You know.
Yeah, that's the problem with this, right? Because you're kind of handing off your expertise, your subject, your SME knowledge of the data to MCP server.
I think they're just so distinct that I think having them conflate them like this is I think it might
Stops
be
becoming
over
useful.
entangling them, right? Because like RAG is just the process of augmenting.
So the way MCP does retrieval, though, you can dial in.
Yeah, you can use MCP to find context through an API, right? But it's not meant to like house your vector index. It's not meant to be a big repository for piles of data, right? Like that isn't what it's meant to solve. What it's meant to solve is I have an API, and that API can give access to context and information, and my LLM needs to know how to be able to use that API. We're oversimplifying just a little bit here, but this is the idea, right? Versus RAG, which is about retrieving volumes of information. So I think they're MCP, again, model context protocol, gives us a protocol to get context. That doesn't mean that it is replaces RAG or should be thought of ahead of RAG. It's in fact just more complex. So if you're getting started, start with RAG. It's very straightforward. Dense vector retrieval plus hybrid plus sparse. So like BM25. We have a whole RAG in 2025 video you can watch on it. Like that's still going to be the easiest way to get things done in today's world. MCP though allows you to grow into more complex use cases and attach things more in more fun ways, let's say.
Okay. And I mean, even RAG itself, as we saw within the past 2 weeks, right? People are like, well, RAG wasn't designed, or this type of dense retrieval wasn't designed for all this.
That's correct.
It was designed for that specific thing there. And now we're in this space with MCP. We're like, well, MCP wasn't designed to replace RAG. MCP was designed for a specific thing there. It was designed for that. It wasn't designed for this thing. And so, yeah, it's quite interesting to watch the evolution of this. We got a clarifying question from Karan Singh Rawat. Isn't MCP just a framework built for RAG applications? I think this is.
Is it? Say that again. I love that question.
Isn't MCP just a framework built for RAG applications?
Oh, no, it isn't. But that's such a good question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing to think about, right? MCP was built to help models get the right context from the right tools at the right time,
including data. Like straight, just getting data from where it is.
That's correct.
Yeah, and this is part of, I think, what the whole industry's go. This is part of what even in launching our cohort last night, I was kind of struggling with is that we have these primary patterns we've dealt with, but now we live in this world of context engineering, and the context engineering world is at the same level as MCP, model context protocol. So it's not just about data. It's not just about RAG. It's not just about prompts. It's not just about prompt engineering. It's not just about tools. It's not just about agents. It's about all of it, because we need all of it to optimize our apps.
That's right.
And so it's a framework for all of it. Not just
exactly. It's like this. MCP, context engineering. Okay, context engineering. This is what we're calling things, right? This is like the super term, the umbrella term that sits above all of RAG and everything else. Context engineering, right, involves maneuvering context around a lot. Not just context from RAG, but context from agents, context from APIs, context from tools, context from cards, context from space, from other planes of existence. The idea is MCP is a way for us to standardize a lot of that stuff that isn't in a really useful state to start with. Okay, so this is how I would implore people to look at this. It's not already in a very useful state, right? APIs and agents, but like just text from RAG already in a useful state, right? We don't really need the translation layer, but for the other stuff, we sure do. For the whole world of context, we need a way to standardize, right? And so that's what that protocol helps us to do.
We don't need to convert text files to PDF to use them, but we might want to convert other stuff to PDF to make it more portable and useful.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's exactly so.
Love it. Okay. All right. Yeah. Good discussion. I agree, Edgar. Thanks, man. So next, what do we got up next after connectors? We got agents. We're going to talk search. We're going to talk tools. We're going to talk function calling. We're going to do this next week. Within this, we're going to open up the agents SDK. Can you give people a little bit of an insight into agents SDK versus responses API for session 3?
We're stepping up a level. We're stepping up one layer of abstraction. We're now going to use something that uses responses API.
Okay, but similarly, we can think about it as if we're building, let's say with LangGraph, we could connect to agents SDK in the same way we're connecting to the responses API, even though it's at a higher layer of abstraction. It's not the core necessarily of what we're building with, although maybe it could be.
Yes.
We're connecting similarly. Okay.
That's right.
All right, Wiz, thanks for your insights as always, man. Great QA period. And thank you everybody for joining us for session 2 here at AI Makerspace. We are on a mission to create the world's leading community for people like you who want to build, ship, and share production LLM applications, wherever the context comes from, wherever that context will lead us to. Join our community. It's full of cool, competent folks like many in the Discord today and many in the YouTube live chat today as well. We launched another cohort of the AI Engineering Bootcamp. Stay tuned for more on upcoming. That was just last night, actually. So shout out to any cohort 8 folks in the audience today. We are going to be talking about demo day within good time, and we've got a new special upcoming course that we're excited to announce next week. So stay tuned for that. If you need any help with your team before the end of the year, reach out. We can certainly think about how we can provide some real value, whether it's from direct training or actually getting our entire network of solo consultants that we've trained and certified to help you out directly. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us again for another YouTube live session. It's been a pleasure. Next week, session 3, agents, tools, function calling, agents SDK. We're going to step it up one more layer. Stay tuned. And in the meantime, keep building, shipping, and sharing, and we'll do the same. Thanks for coming today, guys. See you next week.
But Greg, how do they get started building, shipping, and sharing?
Getting started is the hardest part, like it was for you and for me. You can get started with the AI Engineer Challenge, and you can share it in the Build, Ship, Share channel on Discord. Links in the description. What if they want to accelerate their ability?
Well, we actually have a 10-week intensive bootcamp where you learn to build, ship, and share production-ready LLM applications every single week.
The AI Engineering Bootcamp, cohort starting soon. We'll have you building, shipping, and sharing
like a legend
in no time. We'll see you in class.